we're here today with Judge Catherine Farris-Carter, being interviewed by Catherine Jenny Kilgore. And in the room are Dr. Roy DeBerry, Dayton Shegog, Dylan McCullough, Sierra Fancy Pants Tucker,
There we go.
Ryan Parrish, Caleb Hall, and Morgan Cuterini. And so I guess we are ready.
All right. Well, we're here, as we talked about, for discussion about your time with Legal Services, Catherine. But before we do that, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and where you were born and that kind of thing?
All right. I was born on a rainy day. No, let me stop. I originally out of Sharkey County, grew up in a really, really big town, Anguilla, Mississippi. Now, I did not grow up in the town. I grew up in the suburbs of Anguilla, out on a place called Straight Bayou. So that lets you know just how big of a setting I came from. And it was an unusual community. As I got older, I thought about it. Pretty much most of the young people that were my age growing up out there were being reared primarily by grandparents. I wonder if, as life went on, I wonder if there was some kind of study or something, because it just seemed unusual that all of us had grandparents around us. Whereas after I got older, I realized that a lot of people did not have grandparents. I, in fact, had my great-grandparents. So I had 3 generations raising me, which I think had a lot to do with my understanding and appreciation that I have, especially in certain areas of the law. Graduated from Henry Weathers High School, which is now closed, sadly, due to the loss of population in the area. Graduated from the best university in the state of Mississippi, Jackson State University, and attended Chicago-Kent Law School. I am the 4th of 10 children, and after I graduated from law school, came back to Mississippi, not understanding that law school teaches one absolutely nothing about the practice of law. Only thing law school does is teaches you 2 things: how to do research and how to write. That's it. Doesn't teach you anything about the actual practice of law. So I was fortunate enough to land with North Mississippi Rural Legal Services, whereby I learned how to practice law by baptism by fire. And that's a quite saying that we have, in which when you land, I landed in Greenville, Mississippi as a staff attorney. That office at that time was going through a transition. And I came to work on a Thursday, at which point someone came into the office and dropped a stack of files on the desk and said, "This is your caseload." I said, "Okay," thinking to myself, surely someone's going to come in here and go through all these cases and tell me what to do. And on the way out the door, the secretary said, "Oh, by the way, you have a trial on Monday." So I'm like, okay then. So from there, that was the beginning of my learning experiences.
So about when was that?
I started practicing law in 1983.
So is there a reason you decided to come back?
Well, when I originally went up to Illinois to go to law school, I had watched entirely too much television. And you know, back in those times, you would have these shows about young people who will have just graduated from college and they needed to find themselves. Well, I thought I needed to find myself, so I was going to take a year off in between college and law school. Well, when I landed in Illinois, staying with my sister, it was summertime, which meant the children were out of school, people were on vacation, and everything was wonderful. It comes September, all the children go to school. Everybody who's in college, they go back off to college, and pretty much all the adults, they go back to work. So I'm now sitting in Bellwood, Illinois, looking beside 4 walls because everyone else is gone to work and at school, and I'm talking about I needed to find myself. It was at that point I figured out, okay, I already found myself, I need to do something. And so from that, I got up and got the newspaper, set up 3 appointments for interviews and to get me a job as a legal secretary. And so the very first job I went to was to be a legal secretary at a major, in the legal department for a major insurance company. And I think maybe the people were fascinated with my Mississippi accent because I talked to the lady and she was impressed, and they talked to 2 or 3 more people. Went in and I met the partner and I was hired that day, so I didn't go on another interview. I did not fully appreciate what a legal secretary does. You know, legal secretaries have to type it, 125, 150 words a minute. I couldn't do that. And so I went to work for them, and I was there, I guess about maybe 2 months. I clearly could not carry my part of the workload. And so the partner called me in and told me that they were going to have to let me go because I clearly couldn't do the work. I think I looked sufficiently sad, and I said, well, I was just doing this for the year because I'm going to law school next year. And he's like, oh, well, we didn't know you were going to law school. Go on back out there, Catherine, have a seat. And that's when I then come to appreciate that if you're straightforward and have a good, I guess that's a good outlook on life, how God will work things out for you. The next day, they called me in and said, well, what we going to do? We're going to create a reception position for you. No more typing. They said, you could do the little simple letters. They created a position for me. I worked out the year. When I got ready to go to law school, they gave me a briefcase. I mean, just the whole legal department just took me under their wings, and it was just wonderful.
Wonderful. Well, what made you decide to go to law school?
I had an appreciation that things could be better. I just simply, back in those days, we pretty much had the precept that there were 1 or 2 ways that you can make things better for a large group of people, either through the law or through medicine. With regards to medicine, my great-grandmother, who lived like 2 houses down from us, she had real bad asthma. And it was childhood asthma that had gone into remission. Well, when she had gotten older, they were saying that she was probably going to need shots. So I went with her to the doctor, and the doctor was just talking and telling me, and got her arm, and first we shot the orange. When they're teaching you how to give shots to people, they start off with orange, and I did the orange. I was fantastic, and then they, prepped up my great grandmother's arm, and they gave me the needle. Well, the next thing I knew, when I had her arm and I had the needle, and the next thing I saw was the ceiling. I had fainted.
Oh my.
It just unnerved me. So it was clear to me at that point I wasn't going into medicine.
Right.
So the only other thing I could do was go into the law.
Right. So you felt you could make things better. What were things like at that point that you felt you kind of needed to be part of a solution? Or, you have to think about, people who don't have any idea what things were like out of Angola, Mississippi, and that area. What was the name of the bayou?
Straight Bayou.
Straight?
I don't know why they named it Straight Bayou, because it had more crooks in it than anything in the world. It's a very crooked bayou, but for whatever reason, Straight Bayou out on Highway 14.
But you saw some need for change.
I guess growing up, my great-grandfather really had a true appreciation for reading. He required that I read. I had to read all manners of books, all manner of things. And there would be times and situations when we would be out in the store or be at a place of business or something, and I saw a lot of older individuals who couldn't read and clearly could not have an appreciation for a legal term. And oftentimes I would be thinking, of course, back in those days, kids, we were seen, we were not heard. It was yes ma'am, no ma'am, and unless someone is talking specifically to you, you sat there and you were quiet. So, but I would be in settings in where I would be thinking to myself, I know Mr. X can't read. Someone is reading something to them. do he really understand what he's doing? Do he really understand what they're saying? And that just always bothered me. I don't guess I necessarily had a cause to believe that they were taking advantage of anyone, but it just bothered me that there were not more individuals in certain settings to explain things. And so I just always thought that everyone needs to be empowered. Everyone needs to have someone looking out for them. And so I just decided I would be that person. And as I said, my father gave me two options. You either be a lawyer or you be a doctor. So that was just kind of my direction in life.
So you mentioned your great-grandmother encouraged you to read. Is she the one who encouraged you to go on and get a law degree or higher education?
That was pretty much came from all three segments of the generation that was around me, because I don't think the highest educational level for my parents, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents probably was 11th grade. I don't think any of those individuals actually graduated from high school. But that was one thing that they continuously bore into our brains was, you must get an education. You must complete your education. You can't help yourself. And I was raised in a little small Baptist church, Locust Grove. And that was one thing that was from the church to the home to the school setting that I was in, was that you were not put on this earth to just help you. You were not put on this earth just to make life better for you. You were put here to make a difference in someone else's life. And so they taught us that. I just heard that all my days. And so it just bothered me that, and there's nothing, other than medicine, when you look at the law, that is the one thing that controls and makes a difference in an individual life. That was one of the reasons that I had decided I wanted to be a chancellor. And not a circuit judge. I'm like, no, I don't want to be over there with this circuit court, wonderful place. But as I told people, being a chancellor, Chancery Court affects you from the time you're born, because I can change your birth certificate. I can change your name. All the way up through until when you buy your first house. You and your neighbor fighting about where your property line stops and starts. All the way up until the point in time in which you die. At the point that you die, and for some godforsaken reason a person hasn't done a will, I decide who gets your property. I decide what happens to it. I even decide, depending on what church or what you're in, I can even decide where you buried at.
So, for the benefit of people, kids and people in the community who don't know, just very briefly, what's the difference between being a Chancery Court judge and a circuit judge?
Well, I said Chancery, and that's one of the unique things about Mississippi. We are one of the I think it's only two other states in which the law is still truly divided between Chancery Court and Circuit Court. I think most of the other states have what they call the Superior Court, in which they hear Chancery matters as well as Circuit matters. Chancery, family law. And the important thing about our Chancery Court here in Mississippi is that we are the court of equity. And the way you look at that, there are certain instances in which you have to look at not just what the law calls for, but you also have to look at what is simply right. There are circumstances that you can be in. If I were to look at the plain black letter law, it might not come out fair. Equity gives us that. Circuit Court is strictly law. There's no consideration. There's no compassion. And I know probably a lot of my circuit judge friends would get mad at me for this. I'm certain that they have compassion. I'm not saying they're not compassionate individuals. But under Circuit Court, compassion has no place. Whereas in Chancery Court, equity has a place. For example, you would say, if you were to look at just strictly black letter law, there is the understanding of the law that say something happened to one of the parents. And so now you have one natural parent and you have a set of grandparents. If you were to simply just look at the law was there's a presumption that this natural parent should have custody of this child. Said a couple were never married. So they didn't live together. Said that this mother was simply raising this child by herself. That the other individual did not really have an impact or part in that child's life. Well, something happens to the mother, and it said, for example, the person wants to show up because we now got a big wrongful death action or a lawsuit or something. The law will simply look at, well, there's a presumption for this natural parent to come in. But equity requires that I look beyond just what the presumption of the law is. If there was this grandparent that was there, part of this child's life all this time, has done and been there for that child, equity allows me to look at other factors to say, no, sir, I'm sorry, Father, you just showing up now, the child's 6 years old, and you hadn't paid 1 day of child support, you hadn't visited, you don't have any meaning in this child's life. I can look over here and give consideration to these grandparents. So that's why I love Chancery.
Yeah, okay. So, who would you say was the most, inspired you the most to go the direction you did in your life? You have one person or several people?
I would probably say when it all comes down, it would be my great-grandfather. I mean, I loved and appreciated my parents. I loved and appreciated my grandparents and my great-grandmother. But my great-grandfather was just this amazing individual. I was very much a tomboy when I grew up. And so during that time, I was some may have said I was a cute little girl. So the female part of my family required that I wear cute little dresses and have cute little ponytails and learn how to cook. I learned how to cook, so I did learn all those traits that were considered necessary for a female back in those times when I was growing up. And I did them, but I was not overwhelmingly happy a lot of the time when I was doing that. So my great-grandfather made a proposal to my mother that he would aid them in requiring that I learn the necessary female traits and that he would also have time to teach me other things. So he taught me how to hunt, how to fish. So that's whereas all the rest of the little girls, would be out playing with dolls and doing those kind of things, I'd be off in the woods with my great-grandfather, hunting and fishing and doing those things. And I think that what that taught me was that I was not a one-dimension person. I didn't have to just learn how to do all the female things and all the females' jobs. I also could hunt. I could fish. I could ride a horse. I could be a full, well-rounded individual. And I think, at the end of the day, I cannot think of anyone else who impacted me more than he did, because he was a very quiet person. He was a very quiet individual. He never had to yell at you, but when he said something, you know what he meant, and you acted accordingly. So it would have to be, and his name was Congress. I always want to know, why did my great-grandfather mother name him Willie Congress Farris? I was like, okay, that's an institution, why they named, but that was his name. And so he just made me, I think of all the individuals, and I've known a lot of different, big name, wonderful people, but just that very quiet demeanor of his that he had, that you are not one dimension. You can be anything, everything that you want to be. Let no one tell you anything different.
So, getting back, that's a great story, but getting back to your time at Legal Services, do you, I know that you're a very accomplished person and you could have worked other places. What made you decide to stay for the time that you did at Legal Services? Tell us about your attraction to that work and what you think was worthwhile that you did.
Oh, absolutely. I fully appreciate to this very day that I made the decision to come and work and to stay with North Mississippi Rural Legal Services. I simply do not believe that I would be I would have the same understanding or the same appreciation of the law that I do now if I had not gone through that. As I say, it was traumatizing the first day that they threw all those files, and that Monday I went to court. And as I say, when I went to court, and I'll make it very quick. When I went to court that Monday, I made about 5 different errors. So it was so much work. I didn't have time. I had just had a very short conversation with our client. And so I was sitting in the courtroom. I had gone in, I had spread out all my papers like they do on television, like we did in moot court, you know. I didn't know real life had nothing to do with moot court. So I had everything spread out there. I'm sitting there at the table, and when I heard the door open in the courtroom and I looked back, I saw my client come in, and I saw another lady come in at the exact same time. First mistake, I made a presumption because we were doing a fault ground divorce that was her witness. I never asked her. I never talked to her. But I was thinking that I was smart enough, that I had my questions, that I could take care of the client, but that I could put the witness on the stand and get from her without having prepped her what I needed to just get this divorce. So we got there, and I put my client on the stand, and I sat down. And the judge, today he is one of my favorite judges of all time, Judge Nate Adams. He was the chancellor in Washington County at the time that I started practicing law with legal services. And so I sat down, and he looked, and then the attorney on the other side was saying, well, Judge, you know, she hadn't completed her case, and the chancellor asked me, well, what's your witness? Bring your witness on. So I leaned over to my client, and I said, ma'am, what's your witness name? And she's like, witness? I said, yes, ma'am, the lady that came in with you. I don't know that lady. So, of course, now you can understand the look that goes across my face at that point. Oh, my God, I can't get a fault ground divorce because I don't have a cooperating witness. And so I'm sitting there like a fish out of water. But needless to say, it went on. Judge Adams handled it perfectly. He did not go off on me. He did not embarrass me or anything. He took a recess. We had a conversation. I came back out, requested a continuance, and we got a continuance and went on. And so the matter was rectified, but I oftentimes think back to that as to how I would have been scarred if he had done what would have clearly been within his right. He could have berated me in front of my client. He could have told me I was not properly prepared, that I didn't prove my case, but he didn't. He had compassion on this poor little helpless first-year lawyer. I know. So having met him, and from then, it's just the types of cases that we had. Had a case where a big entity was building homes, was doing a good deed. They were coming in by getting property through one of those governmental development projects and buying up the property to build some low-income houses. Well, everybody didn't want to sell. It was this one little gentleman who did not want to sell, and they had told him to go down there to see the lady down there at Legal Services. She'll help you. And so he came down there. I filed a suit to stop it, and we went all the way through it, and you know, got people to help us with the case so that he could get a fair market price for his home. They were trying, clearly, you know, everybody was trying to make some money, so they were not necessarily giving the current homeowners and their property the true value for it. And so it's just as a matter when starting off, and the further off I got into it with legal services, it just became more evident that somebody had to do it. Somebody had to be there, and if it was somebody, why not me? So it's just all the different types of cases, the Social Security cases, just all the different types of cases. And I guess what really struck me after I'd been practicing maybe a couple of years at legal services, I did not know, and I guess that probably happens to most people, there's a lot of us that grew up in the Mississippi Delta. I was unaware of the fact that I was poor. I didn't know I was poor until, you know, I got up and went to the big city and all this other information thing. I didn't know I was poor because for approximately the first 7 years of my life, we didn't have running water. in the house. But it didn't bother me. I didn't think anything was wrong with that. We just went out there to the pump and got to, I mean, it's just the things that we did. And I did not realize that I was poor, but I may have been materially poor. But I had so much more that money could never buy. And so legal services was, that to me was meeting the different attorneys who just had the vigor and just the fight for making things better for people who were poor. And the most amazing thing that I learned, or one of the amazing things that when I was at legal services, like we would have cases and it was just a community setting there, because there would be time when little people in the neighborhood, we will have done had a wheel project or something, and did all the wheels at certain little people at certain little churches and things. Well, that Monday, the little ladies would bring lunch to us. Like Miss Mary would have cooked a pot of greens, and Miss Ann would have cooked a thing of candied yams and fried chicken. They cooked and brought that food to the office. You know, and did that for us. That to me was more valuable than all the money that if I'd gone to some of the other places that I'd got offers for jobs from. The money would have been wonderful, but there's nothing that could have matched that. That there were people in the neighborhood, there were people in the community around legal services office there in Greenville. When I went to legal services, worked up in Holly Springs, the community cared for us. The community thought of us. And like I said, some good home cooking, you just can't beat that.
That's true. Are there any particular, you mentioned certain kinds of cases that you handled that kind of stood out in your mind. Are there any other cases that you feel that were pretty important that you worked on for the community?
Well, I guess one case is that, and you know, everybody, I think probably everyone at the legal service worked on was the Tunica County Sugar Ditch case.
Right.
That was just the most.
Tell us about that.
Well, now that instance there was at that point in time I was the managing attorney down in the Clarksdale office of North Mississippi Rural Legal Service. And anyone who've ever had any time or association with legal services would know Alvin Chambliss. Well, Alvin showed up at the office and asked me, well, what you doing? I said, I'm doing plenty. I got plenty of work to do.
Now, who was Alvin?
Alvin was out of the Oxford office, and he was lead counsel, I believe, with the Tunica County, the Sugar Ditch case. And so Alvin said, well, I need for you to go with me. Come go with me over to the Planning and Development District. My brain said, no, don't do that. But Alvin was talking fast, and I really need this. I really need to get this done. Okay, I'll go. So we went over there, and
What's the Planning and Development District?
well, the Planning and Development District, that is in the state of Mississippi. You have those entities through which a lot of federal dollars will run through in terms of development projects for your housing, for your water and sewer. Those are the conduits. Those were at that point the conduits for those federal dollars. They would come in and then they would be divided up within the various counties that comprise.
Regional, governmental.
They were like a sub-governmental thing that all the federal dollars ran through.
Right.
And so we had to go over because they would be the entity that would have all the necessary paperwork and everything to justify as to why a certain town or community could or could not get the necessary funding. So when we got over and we were in there talking, and the next thing I knew, so we had asked for certain documents and they had said we couldn't have them. Well, the next thing I knew, I heard a lot of noise back over in the office. And the next thing I hear, Alvin has got on the telephone. And Alvin said he has called PUSH. And that was the organization with the Reverend Jesse Jackson in Chicago. Alvin had called, say he was called PUSH and said, look, he was talking loud, we could hear the noise. Look, man, this young lawyer, we over here, the building is surrounded. They've called law enforcement. I got up and looked out the window. I don't see anybody. There's nobody out here. What's going on? He's telling me he didn't know if we're going to get out there dead or alive. You got to get Jesse on the telephone. He was in the midst of go. Of course, by then, all the poor little planning development district people, they done got excited. They done got to going. And he was going. So I asked the director, I said, excuse me, sir. This is public information because you've collected it with federal dollars. We just need the staff. Can I just get the information? Okay. Well, we wasn't set. So they gave us the information. Everything was fine. I went in there, told Alvin, so when we left, I asked Alvin, what were you doing? See, I knew. See, we had to do a good cop and the bad cop. See, I was the bad cop. And I was talking, I'm like, I should never go any place else with you again, long as I live. So that was a humorous case there.
Needless to say,
Look, absolutely. So that was a big case that we had. Like I said, and I guess the probably the case is, like I said, the housing case where it was good that they wanted to do the development for low-income houses, but you can't deprive one person of the value of their property because you want to do good for a larger number of people. So we had that case.
Could you go back just a minute? You and I both know what Sugar Ditch was, but could you clarify that?
Well, in Tunica County, there was this section in Tunica County, and they called it Sugar.
Before the casinos.
Oh, long before the casinos.
It was one of the poorest counties in the country.
It was. And probably it's back to that point now because they had that massive influx of casino money. They have financial issues now, not necessarily in terms of how it was managed, but but back to the Sugar Ditch, there was a row of houses, and what they did was there was no indoor plumbing, and there was no centralized plumbing. So what they would do is hit a pipe to the sewer and ran it across the street or the road, because it wasn't a street, across the dirt gravel road, and so that the raw sewage would run into the ditch away from the house. And that was amazing. That was something. And so they had been trying for the longest to get indoor plumbing, to get a treatment system over there to deal with that raw sewage coming out, and finally had gotten done, but it was a long haul. It was a long haul. And then when you think about it, because you had that open ditch of raw sewage, and so the little children would be out there playing. If you playing and the ball roll over there, then you just got your ball out the sewage untreated. So it was just But of course, oftentimes I think that I heard someone had an adverse reaction to that. But if you're raised in that setting, if you're raised in that condition, how do you know it's not good? How do you know it's not bad? I mean, whatever one is raised in, whatever one is raised as a part of, I'm certain that those parents, after they got exposed in there, but that little child didn't know anything was wrong with that. If my ball run over there, just because it fell over there in some raw sewage, I'm not going to leave my ball in there. So it was not a matter of holding them responsible, the people that were responsible for that inhumanity were the governmental officials. Right. That's who should be held accountable for that. It was not the people who was forced and suffered to live like that.
So inequality in the provision of services to the people in the area based on race and poverty.
Yes, just plain, simple, straightforward. Those people of authority, those people in position of power, had made a decision as to what your value was. Right. And you did not warrant, and you had no value that would entitle you to public utilities, period. It was just that simple. So when as you become exposed to and see more of those kinds of things, I think that what caused me to stay in there as long as I did.
So that's what legal services was up there trying to.
Well, not trying. They did it. They did it. Like I said, back in the 80s, that was one of the proudest things that proudest parts of my legal career was the fact that in the actual ability of legal services to do good deeds on a massive level have clearly been so severely curtailed due to various reasons, majority funding, just in terms of how the actual fundings and things have been moved out. But back in those days, it was a juggernaut because clearly I do not believe that the sugar dish issue would have been addressed but for the fact that you had someone there on the ground. And that was the important thing about legal services was it was the people that lived there. We who lived there, we were there every day. I think that's one of the tragic problems that I think still exists to a great part here in the Mississippi Delta today. There are too often an instant for someone to swoop in to talk about solving something, to talk about rectifying something. No, you can't come in, parachute in, and talk about you're going to solve anything. The only way problems truly get solved, truly get addressed, is by people who live every day on the ground. Because they have to be there, in there for the long term. Because if someone simply swoops in, oh, well, I'm going to come in, and they may come in and put up one water tower. Yeah, but what about when the community grows and those issues? Who's going to make certain that the water system is maintained and taken care of and put in place? You swoop in and put it up. It's got to be maintained every day. That's why it's so important that any growth or development or improvement of life takes place with the people on the ground. Yeah, we may need some help and assistance from outside, but it's those of us who are here that's going to make the difference.
They have to make the change.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the way legal services was structured, you feel that that North Mississippi Rural Legal Services attorneys and workers were part of the community. Is that your point?
Absolutely.
And therefore, they had the connection to help make these changes.
Absolutely. That was the unique thing about North. North, back then, I believe it was about 12 or 13 offices. So you had Greenville, you had Greenwood, you had Cleveland, you had Clarksdale, you had Batesville. So you had every community, I would think within a 50 or 75 mile radius, you had those offices that took care of that radius. So you didn't have to wait for 2 or 3 hours for someone to drive all the way from Oxford to come all the way down to Greenville to deal with a pressing issue. You had people there on the ground. Now, clearly you had expertise in the senior attorneys and those kinds of things, those litigation attorneys, like Leonard McCullum, like Alvin. You had those individuals that when you, as a young attorney there in Greenville, if I ran into a problem and saw an issue and I couldn't see my way out of it, then I called Oxford. Look, I got so-and-so going on down here. What do you think? What do you think I always needed to do? And Leonard, he'd get on the phone and after he get through yelling, well, look here, look up so-and-so. Do you want me to come down there? I mean, they were always, whereas Oxford was the nucleus, the running of everything, they would come out into the field. They'd come to Greenville. They'd come to Cleveland. There were often times when I had major cases against a big name law firm. I'm pretty brave, but I'm not insane. Look, if I know I'm dealing with a really big law firm, I'm calling Leonard. Look, I got so-and-so going. I've done all the research. I've got everything. There's a comfort level when you're sitting at that counsel table and I've got 3 years experience. Sitting next to me, I got an attorney who's got 15 or 20 years experience. There's a difference. And, and just in terms of just the experience and everything. So that made the real difference when we were at North. We were local. We had the local people, and the local people there in Greenville, they knew, me by name, but also they knew that all we had to do was call Oxford, and Oxford would send somebody, a senior attorney, somebody in to help us. So that made the difference.
I know it's speculative, but do you have any thoughts about if the program had never been here, had not been ever existed, what would have been the difference to the people in the community?
I would hate to think I don't believe that a lot of those major cases, those major things that were done, that's not to say that they wouldn't have been done and might have been done in a longer period of time, but it made a difference. And I guess my perception in terms of cases, I know most people probably don't look at it the way I do, but whereas we had the Sugar Ditch case, which made a difference in terms of public utilities for a whole quadrant of people, I consider it just as important, that case, as significant as it is, it has no more importance from my standpoint, than when little Miss Mary over here, who knows something she got coming in as her Social Security check, and because someone did something improper down at the public utility and her lights about to get cut off and all her food in her refrigerator get wasted. I understand when you look at the total, someone else has to look at it beyond me, but little Miss Mary's case is just as important to me as the Sugar Ditch case. Every case matters because little Miss Mary need to be able to go to sleep at night knowing that someone cares about her and someone is looking out for her needs. So I think that North Mississippi would have been further back than we are if it had not been for North and had not been attorneys willing to come in to be paid very little money. I remember that, looking at that loan and looking at my paycheck and thinking, okay, still haven't called mom and daddy to help pay a few dollars here and there, so, but at the end of the day, someone had to stand in the gap for those individuals, and that's the one good thing I still think about in terms of Mississippi. People always saying what's bad about Mississippi and what we don't do in Mississippi, but at the end of the day, just as I was a young lawyer there, and those wonderful little people from that church cooked and bought me lunch that Monday because we went over there on that Friday, that Saturday, and did wheels for all of the senior citizens there at that church. Mississippians look out for each other. Yeah. We still take care of each other. It's only a small fraction of us that forget what's the meaning of life and what's our purpose here. We're put on this earth to serve somebody. We're put on this earth to serve our fellow man, to look out for our fellow man. And I truly believe that saying, to whom much is given, much is required. I've had a very blessed, very wonderful life. So that's why I get up and I still be at the office at 7:15, 7:30 in the morning. I'm a morning person. I was raised on a farm. I get up and I'm there early. I still, even though I may fuss a lot of time at my administrator, there are days I got 7 or 8 cases lined up on my docket because someone needs to get in to get something done right now. To whom much is given, much is required. And I think that's a good thing about us as Mississippians. That's in our blood. As much as we fight with each other, at the end of the day, we still want to take care of each other.
Right. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about what things we've talked about this morning?
I guess the only thing that continuously stayed with me today is that I think that in those instances where we've had technology, I think technology is doing a disservice to us. I think technology is supposed to enhance us, enable us to do more, but we've now almost been reduced to the proposition that I'm going to send you a text. I don't care what anybody says. My clicking out something is not the same thing as you hearing my voice. It's not the same thing as when I call you and I say, I need something. Or you call me and ask, can you do this for me? We are moving too far from the human touch. It makes a difference. That's one reason I would, oftentimes people have said, well, you ever thought about going to the appellate court? Not living. No, I don't want to go to the appellate court. I still want to, every day when I'm doing these cases, I still can turn and look at that person sitting in the box. I need to be able to see you, to see your sincerity, to see what it is that you're trying to get done. Why you are coming to the court. I guess that's the only thing that causes me any real trepidation now is I hope and pray every day that we don't allow technology to take our humanity from us. And unfortunately, it seems. I know that. I know it's because I'm an old person. I know young people saying, "Oh, it's not like that." My nephew, little Rick, all that. Auntie, it's not that bad. I promise you. Yes, it is, baby. Don't send me a text. And he loves. He will. No, he will send me a text and just thought about you. Want to say I love you? You know what? I appreciate you sending me that text that told me love. And you can send me a long text that it takes you for 2 or 3 minutes. I'll take 15 seconds. Hey, Auntie, how you doing? Love you. Thinking about you. Bye. To me, that means more than sending text. That's the only thing.
Just taking that one step further, and in terms of the way that legal services has changed through the years, the changes in the kinds of cases that could be handled, no class actions, that kind of thing. The required change to a lot of resources being put in the call center as opposed to neighborhood law offices that you talked about, in which the people came in. Do you have, and you're a judge now and been involved in access to justice in a lot of different ways, revamping state laws through commissions and so forth. Have you got any thoughts about the direction of the access to justice or legal services in the future? I know we can't stop the bus. It's going to change things, but
I guess in some of the changes were starting right when I was coming in between being at the Attorney General's office and at Legal Services. This massive push forward in terms of the call centers and those things. I guess the real problem that I have with that is depending on who it is that's on the other side of the phone. Because a lot of times when we had individuals in the office and we're talking to them, they may come in and actually think that, well, I need A. But after you have a conversation, well, no, ma'am, you don't need a A. What you actually need is B and C, simply because that person may not necessarily have a true appreciation of the law. I mean, a lot we watch too much. Got Judge Judy on there who's doing a lot of law. We got, Judge Brown. There's about 4 or 5 judges. I mean, just a judge show everywhere, on every television. So people are looking at that, and they're thinking that because you see these lay people having a conversation or pleading their case, that they can understand what they need to address their legal matters. It makes a difference to be able to have a conversation with an individual, and especially to me, and a lot of that has to do just being realistic with the age of the caller. I mean, that has a lot to do with it. We oftentimes want to put blindness on where we're not going to consider the age or the educational level, those things. No, all of us are different, all of us are unique, and all of us have different setting and placement in life. So the call center, it may well take care of a volume in terms of somebody calling and having an issue, but it may not necessarily allow you the opportunity to get all the information you need to actually help them with what their true problem is. And again, I guess that is, again, the same problem. It's mass volume. It's everything now is quick, fast, and in a hurry. Sometimes we need to just slow down just a little bit. And there's nothing that can replace the human contact. Nothing can replace the human touch for what needs to be done. And so I understand, as you said, the bus has already left. That bus has already left the station. There's no way around it. We can't get it back, but it's unfortunate. Mm-hmm.
is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Well, no, just to say that I give full measure of credit to North Mississippi Rural Liquor Services for the judge I am today. Coming out of law school knowing absolutely nothing about the true practice of law, I was able to meet quality individuals who taught me that the most important thing in the practice of law are people, helping them solve their problems. That was the most important thing. And so, just that, I hate that we are losing our humanity in some measure, but North truly made a difference in the state of Mississippi. And I was glad to be a part of it for almost 20 years.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for inviting me.